Welcome into the PHNX Coyotes podcast, brought to you by the one and only DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah Merrill here with Craig Morgan and Steve Peters. We're back all together in Studio B. And it's for a very special occasion because today we are welcoming in Arizona Coyotes General Manager Bill Armstrong. Bill, welcome back to the PHNX Coyotes podcast. This is actually your second appearance on this show. We appreciate you joining us. And I don't know if you remember, the first time we had you, we showed you the Bill the Builder graphic that we had for you. So let's just pull that up again as a reminder to everyone. So we just made a new graphic because, things have been, the season's gone along, and Bill the Magician is the latest. So first question for you, which graphic do you prefer?
You know what? I just want to pose before I answer that. What happens when we go through a tough stretch where we lose 20? What's that
one? Can we get back to you on that one?
Yeah, all right. I don't know. I like Bill the Builder. I always like to build things, so I prefer that one.
Yeah.
If you do magic, you need a lot of luck on your side, I guess.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, Bill, listen. Your team has won 4 games in a row for the first time this season. Is that a good thing, given the goals?
Yeah, I think it is. When you're very demanding of your players and you're trying to change the culture and you're preaching the new way to do business inside our locker room, our practices, what we expect from the players, it's really, really important that at some point in time, success comes from that. I think, you can always say in the rebuild, you don't want to be too good, and I can understand why people would be concerned, but at the same time, you want to be a competitive organization that goes out and achieves, and we've been able to do that. And, the guys like Smoltzy and Kells and Chikrin and Veggie and Wedgie, all these guys have been, really, really contributed to these 4-game win streak, and it's been, and obviously when you get on the bus, and I try to travel with the guys. My research before I took over was, if you're going to do a rebuild, make sure you're around to suffer through it with them. I do try and be around and go through it. And it's nice to see the guys get rewarded and get on the bus and see how happy they are. And it surely makes for a better plane ride.
What's impressed you most about this run?
Well, the ability to score goals.
Seriously.
They've had a run. They've had a run. We've run into some teams that have had some bad goaltending, and we haven't missed. And that combination has been a good thing for our club, and for a team that wasn't supposed to score, in the stretch we've scored. So that's been nice. It's and even the calls are going our way, and Chick misses on the shot and it goes in last night. So it's going our way, that's for sure.
Wait, one thing, Billy, and you just brought it up too, and you are a professional athlete. You competed in the locker room. You competed for a team. You're a competitor. It's part of the nature of who you are. So in this general manager role, it's different. And especially during a rebuild, it's different. But Craig brought it up. You still want to win. Like, I don't know how you can sit in that press box and not be excited about this team's going. How do you balance your job and your emotions?
Yeah, that's a truly tough one. That is probably the toughest thing, because you don't get to these positions, or you don't get to this league as a player, coach, or general manager unless you're competitive. So then all of a sudden you got to squash your emotions. It's probably the toughest thing to go through every day that we deal with. But one thing that I've tried to dig into is the process, whether I'm dealing with the coaches and we're talking about players and how to improve. We continually work on the process and keep focused. And that is something that, whether it's our eating, whether it's our, it's our skills guys are writing down, what can we improve in the game. We are 100%, bought into working the process and becoming better. So whether you win or whether you lose, as long as the next day you get up and dig into that process, you can move forward as a competitor, and your team gets better, and hopefully in the end that leads to us winning a championship one day.
You mentioned some of the players having success in this stretch. Most notably, Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz are on fire right now. How do those two fit into this team's future, both in the short term and possibly the long term?
Well, it's a great question. I just want to touch base on Nick Schmaltz. The hotel we were at yesterday shows Center Island in Toronto, which you could probably swim from the shore of Toronto to Center Island. It's not that far. And I'm pretty sure I looked out before the game and he was walking on water across Center Island and then walked back across the water up before the game. Those two guys are key. Schmaltz has been a player that, obviously struggled. We had a talk with him and he got injured. And he's found a way to kind of contribute with Keller at an elite level. I don't think he can keep up that pace, but he has gained a tremendous amount of confidence, and I think he's getting a greater understanding of how good he can be if he applies himself. And I still think there's room to grow with his summer training.
Bill, obviously the trade deadline is coming up. I think it's 10 days away now. There's been a lot of chatter, obviously, for the last 3 months, so you would have thought it passed already, but it's finally approaching. So let's ask some questions regarding the trade deadline. First off, what's the state of the market right now? What trends are you hearing in asking prices? What's holding things up, et cetera?
Well, there's no money in the league. so everybody's maxed out on the salary cap. So what happens is if I'm going to make a trade with someone, I need you to, take someone back because you've got to create room for the player coming in, and it hasn't moved. Now, I have a feeling once one of the big guys goes down, then it'll start to move a little quicker, and I think the majority of work will be done, 2 or 3 days out. But it just hasn't transpired. And I think the media also, at this time, everybody builds up the trade deadline, and it can be a long day for the media when nothing's moving. So, they have these shows, and I think they're almost like they torture the guys in Canada because everybody's tuned in and nothing happens. So it's kind of like the ball dropping in New York City. You stand around and wait for it for 4 hours and nothing really happens. So.
But that's kind of like us here too, Bill. Like, honestly, we've been talking about the trade deadline on this show for 2 months, and then here's what you do: you go and sign some of the guys that we say, "Oh, that for sure that guy is going to be gone," and then you sign them, and then we look like idiots. So, what do you feel that day is going to be like for this organization in the 10 days leading up to between now and then? Do you see it being active, or are you answering phone calls and just going from there, or do you plan to be a pretty busy participant?
Well, you try to really get involved any way you can, just in trying to create assets and trying to better your organization. But a lot of times, people are just calling kicking tires, and there's nothing that really moves. So the truth of it is, a trade deadline for us, I think it was probably done in the summer, the majority of it.
A name that's come up a lot over the last few months, is Jacob Chychrun. And I know you've said before that you don't want to trade him or necessarily need to trade him, but if there's an offer that provides an opportunity to improve this team, are you going to listen? And is it fair to assume that you have not received an offer good enough so far?
Yeah, Jacob got off to a little bit of a slow start with us, and he lately he's really found his game and picked it up and been one of the main reasons we're on this 4-game win streak, and you can see that he's back in form. There's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of noise about it. At the end of the day, he's a good player for the Coyotes. If somebody makes you an offer that you can't refuse, then obviously that's a hockey trade you got to make, and my phone's always on to listen. But right now, he's a Coyote, and when we plan on having him for a while.
I wanted to talk about another guy who's been in the news very recently because of his cross-continent travels, Phil Kessel.
Yes.
How do you think he has handled this whole situation, this pretty public situation? It's no secret that Phil probably wants to play for a contender at this stage of his career. How has he handled all this?
Well, I think he's realistic of his cap hit and the amount of teams that don't have money. So I think I think he's realistic of that fact, that he's for him to move and change teams, it's going to have to be a perfect fit where somebody can take on that amount of cap space. So not to say it won't happen. It might happen, and obviously that team has to have a need for the type of player that Phil is. Phil continues to generate points. He continues to help us win. He's been great at it. The one thing that people don't know about Phil behind the scenes, but he's really loved by his teammates. And I think he's been truly somebody. He's an entertaining guy. He's an entertainer behind the scenes with his teammates, and he's truly a big part of our team. So I know with the birth of his daughter, the guys were really, really happy, and he got his game in and got to go on a flight, and he made it just in time. It was perfect. It was perfect for him. So we were really excited for him, and he was able to join us last night and help out in our win.
I'm sure you've seen some unusual things in your time in the league, but that was quite a story. To watch him fly across the continent twice, all that happened. Yeah. That was a crazy story.
Yeah, I tried to get him on the red eye too, and I'm like, listen, we flew you all the way across, on the way there, on the way back, we're trying to get you back as early as possible, and his COVID test, it didn't match up, so we got him on the later flight, but he made the game.
Oh no! Wow.
Yeah, it was, so, but he's been a trooper, and it's not easy for him to go through the rebuild. Obviously, he's won 2 championships, and he's a competitor, and he feels like, hey, listen, I could help somebody else win a championship too. So, but I think he's realistic of the cap hit and where he's at, and we'll see what happens on trade deadline.
And Bill, that's one of the things I think fans and us sitting here doing these shows forget about sometimes is the personal aspect of this, and that Phil Kessel story really brings that to the forefront, that they're not just pieces on a chessboard, they're people. And we had a letter come in. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter. It was a very young hockey fan in the Valley that had met Lawson Crouse, and Lawson Crouse is their favorite player, and please don't trade Lawson Crouse. But I guess my question to that is, Bill, everyone understands the business, and you need to improve the franchise as best you can. How does it affect you as a person, though? Because they are people, and they do have lives and families. How does that part affect you as a general manager?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It is. That's the toughest part, and you've got to have a heart, but you can't let your heart rule your head, and that's the toughest part of doing this job, and is that you get to know the person behind the scenes and how much they give towards the team, and at times that you have to make hard decisions that move people. Dzingel, one of them, just a great human being and someone that approached our team with a lot of energy and effort and dropped his gloves and did whatever he took for his teammates. So those are tough. Those are tough moments as a GM. And you're right. There are people behind the scenes. Everybody thinks that their life is made and they play in the NHL and everything's rosy, but it's truly not like that to some degree. It's really real life, and it really hurts when we have to move those type of people.
Bill, we have quite a few people watching live right now. We just received a super chat from Ryan, who's asking a question that I just want to read. So, Bill, as the GM for the best team in the league right now, they're definitely the hottest. What's the most important thing to take away from these last 4 games, and what is the main goal going into the last part of the season?
Well, that's a great question. That is a good question, and it's funny because I was thinking about that earlier. Like, what did we learn from this? And when you go through that and you see your team play at its peak, you take little tidbits about that and you store them away. And so what we learned from that is Matthias Michelli can play. He's got to get a little bit stronger at times, but his feel for the game, he can be someone that has a chance to be in our starting lineup next year and be an impact player, depending on how hard he trains in the summer. So that's one thing that we learned for sure. I think when you go through that and you watch Moser in the stretch, him play guys one-on-one like Matthews and not get beat as a young player, and being a lead skater, you take those little things away. We've also beat Colorado, so you've been able to see your team play at a high level. You've seen your goaltenders compete, so you gauge, as you go through that win streak, just how good your guys are. Can Smoltz get to another level and play like that because he's untouchable? Can he help drive you to a championship? And you're always sticking these little tidbits away. when you're watching us, play at our peak, and hey, if we added a player here and you added a player here, how good could these guys be? And that's what you kind of take from it. And that's why it's good for us to go through those, the win streak there. We get to see everybody play at an elite level, and they're capable of it. For the rest of the year, we'll try and get some young kids in at some points. We could sign some college free agents and try and get them in the lineup at the same time. We'll continue to press and make sure that we work as hard as we can, and we play every game as hard as we can down the stretch, and make sure we get that out of it. Our culture from the moment we've started to the time we end, we're going to play hard, and our players have bought in it and led the charge, and we're not going to stop.
I'm glad you mentioned some of those plans because it dovetails into a question I wanted to ask you. I spoke to a bunch of agents about your ability to fill out a roster, given the fact that you only have 25 guys under contract next season organization-wide. Can you give us just a sense of how the remainder of this roster will be built, whether it's through re-signing your own guys, going out and getting other guys, trades, et cetera?
Well, you learn a lot by sometimes just having someone that you didn't quite know as well. And I'll give you an example as Boyd. Boyd drives that line for us. So for us to go out and sign Boyd, we know for sure he's going to help drive the Keller Schmaltz line. And he's a huge signing for us. He's somebody that, another team who's an average player with us, he's one of our top players just because he's found chemistry and what he brings every day of his work ethic and his drive. So I think for us as signing these players down the stretch, the Dyson Mayos of the world, or O'Brien's, these are pieces to our team that we feel we can move forward with, that are going to help our team for the next 2 to 3 years and give us a chance to be a competitive club. And with Obi, we signed him, and he'll do whatever it takes to protect his teammates. He'll do whatever it takes to make sure our team gets going. If there's a lull in the game, he'll go out there and get 3 or 4 hits. And so he's really added a spark and some toughness and some grit to our team. And the last guy was Mayo, and we went out and signed him. He plays almost 20 minutes a night, probably the most underrated D in the league. He's probably the strongest human being, pound for pound, I've seen. He takes on all the big guys and wins puck battles. So the guys that we've signed, they're kind of like our little diamonds in the rough, and they bought in to our culture and what's expected in the desert, and they drive our team every night.
I wanted to ask you about something else that came from that conversation with a bunch of agents. There's this narrative that's being spun from some corners that the Coyotes need to treat their players better. I know you have strong feelings on this, so what would you say on that topic?
Well, they should ask the players first before they make comments like that. That was the biggest thing I had to take away, is that they tried to paint the brush with one, said, oh, the arena's bad, it's a bad situation, and they tried to paint the entire organization. I said to them, listen, we've got one of the best salary caps in the league. Where we're at as an organization and our structure of our money is probably one of the best in the league. We've got an opportunity to do just about anything salary-wise. We have the most picks in the league in the next 3 to 4 years than any other NHL team. It's not even close. We've also found some great prospects in the meantime between Gunther or Moser or Kolnichuk or Vejmelka. We've added them, as we've moved forward here. So we've got a ton of prospects inside our organization. We've got a ton of picks. We've got a great salary cap, and we've added a ton of great hockey people, along with Shane Doan and Larry Plow and John Ferguson and Daryl Plandowski and Ryan Janikowski. We've added hockey people that can move us forward and help us pick some great players. So when they paint the brush and they say, oh, the Coyotes are bad, my point to them was, we're not. We're actually a really good and upcoming organization. We have an arena issue that we have found, that's going to help us move forward, a place to play in Arizona. But other than that, we're in a really, really good position as an organization. In fact, there'd be a lot of organizations that would kill to be where we are.
You mentioned Michelli and how you see him being a part of the lineup possibly next year. And in the past, you've talked about the philosophy of overbaking players in the AHL. So players like Michelli and maybe Gunther, who's not eligible for the AHL next year, but just Unique, Kolyachonok, players of the like. So going into next year, and obviously everyone will have their fair shot at training camp, but how do you see, those up-and-coming players fitting into the roster in the upcoming seasons and wanting to give them their chance to develop and balance that with having them get their shot in the NHL as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because, I'm all about the over-baking. The problem is when you say that and then the guy goes out and gets 50 points in 30 games, you throw that whole philosophy right out the window. Over-baking works, but at the same time, the reason for us it hasn't worked so much is because we've had needs. We've had needs because of injuries and guys going down and just a massive injuries all year long. And, it's almost been a blessing because the players have played well, whether they've been in the minors and coming up top, they've seized the opportunity and jumped in. And you can see, that's what our coaches have done. They've done a great job with the younger player, getting them not only to because sometimes you can almost fake it. You can stick kids in the lineup and they look like NHL players and you can hide them. When they play for us, you can't hide them. They're going in and they're playing hard minutes. And those guys, from Moser to Kolnichuk to Vejmalko, to Michelli being in overtime last night, there's no shelter. And those guys have really done a great job and helped us succeed. And it's been a lot of those guys have been pleasant surprises, like Dyson Mayo. It's been really unique experience, and they've taken the advantage of their opportunity.
Bill, you mentioned the coaching staff and how they're coaching these developing players. Coaches are often graded by wins and losses. I mean, now this is a little different situation this year. So how do you grade first-time NHL head coach Andre Tournier and his staff? And furthermore, beyond the grading, how has that relationship and communication been between your office and their office when you're going through a period like you are, call it a rebuild, when a difficult period? How has that communication been?
Yeah, the communication is really good. Obviously we get off to a really rough start. I thought Bear was he was close to death at one point there when I looked at him on the plane after the loss, and I kind of looked over at him after I traded Dvorak and the majority of the players of Kemper, and I said, "I'm sorry." But there was no excuses when we went into the season, and he did a great job of getting over that hump because that's tough when you lose that many games off the start. And you're preaching and teaching and being demanding, and then you're not having any success. But our players, and credit to the coaching staff and the players, stuck with it, and we got a little bit better. And I think, Bear's an experienced coach, but at the same time, the NHL was new to him as a head coach. And, there's a little adjustment period, and he's done a great job. And what he's really driven home and how I grade him is, the enthusiasm, number one, our players come to the rink. You walk in. If we had a tough loss or we didn't play very well and you go in and practice, you'd think we were in first place. The enthusiasm that our guys take the ice with and how they approach it is outstanding. And that's the environment that the coaches create, and if you walk on our bus every morning or on the plane, everybody says good morning. I say it about 100 times, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. But that's how we greet each other, and that's the whole thing, is that we don't let the other day overflow into the day. And I think that's a credit to the coaches, and they've done a great job. And I think the other thing that I look for and how I judge our team, because you can't always judge on wins and losses, does the team get better? Does it slowly grow? Do the players get better as the season moves forth? And every one of our guys, we don't have the depth of a Stanley Cup winner like Tampa. So at times, we get a little thin, but in saying that, for the most part, all our guys are achieving, whether you're Ghost on the back end or you're Schmaltz or Chikrin or Vejmalka, everybody's having good years. And that's how I kind of judge it. You see Barrett Hayden's made a jump since he's got his surgery. He's come back, and, even Nick Ritchie jumps back in, from Toronto. He's almost at a point a game. So, you see your team get better and better, and obviously you can see the wins lately. We continue to improve, and that's how I judge the coaches.
Want to switch gears for a minute here with you, Bill. The NHL recently cut ties with the KHL, suspending all dealings with the league and telling franchises to stop all contact with the KHL and Russian-based agents. How does this impact you in terms of free agents you might have hoped to sign, Russian players you've already drafted, or even the upcoming NHL draft with prospects you might have been looking at?
Yeah, it's a really sensitive subject. Obviously, there's a war, and you turn on your TV, it's on every day, and it's really political, and it's hard. I feel for the Russian players, because it's an awkward situation for them, and this is just my personal opinion. I've traveled the world. People don't want war. Like they don't want war. I mean, everybody wants peace, and hopefully that situation gets worked out, because the Russian hockey players are certainly paying a price, and it's just an awkward situation that we in the NHL have to deal with, because we have players coming from Russia. Sometimes they come from the Ukraine, sometimes they come from Belarus, and for the most part, hockey players don't really bring their political thoughts or feelings sometimes into the dressing room, or we'd all be divided, I guess, and it's just awkward. It's a tough situation, and it'll not only affect the Russian players here in the league as of now, but it'll also affect them at the draft too.
Do you steer clear of it at this point, or how do you approach it with the draft?
I think we're going to have some meetings about that, and see how we feel, and and you come to a conclusion as an organization, are we going to draft Russian players because of what's been going on? And obviously we haven't had those meetings yet, but I think that's something where you bring your ownership and everybody, involved, and you have conversations, and you take the temperature outside, and see what how the NHL feels about it. And, obviously you got to go through them and make sure it's something that they want to take part in, and get the approval of the league, and then move forward as an organization and come to a conclusion about how we feel about it.
So speaking of the draft, and hopefully we'll have the chance to connect with you again before then, but it's just 4 months away. So what's the state of your scouting, your draft board, and what's your sense of the strengths in this upcoming draft?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we really liked about the draft is, there's been a lot of guys, players lately that have kind of come out of nowhere, just because of the simple fact that they were going through COVID. The OHL hadn't played in a whole year, and there's about 4 or 5 guys that have just kind of jumped in and added some depth to the draft. So that's really exciting. And then I think, up top, it's becoming a little bit more an understanding of the top 10. And it's a hard time to scout, because you've got COVID wars going on, overseas. So there's a whole bunch of things that are going on. Luckily for our staff, we've been at it in August. We've known exactly the picks that we've had and where we're going to pick at. So that's been a blessing for us, that we've got the majority of hard scouting out of the way. Now we move down the stretch, and we want to see these guys in, championship moments and the big moments as the playoffs start to kick in.
Well, Bill, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. And like I said, hopefully we'll have you back on before the draft in July. But, best of luck tomorrow against Boston.
Keep that streak going, Bill.
Yeah.
Our guys are hungry. They're excited.
They're fun to watch right now.
It's been really
a fun hockey team to watch right now.
My only worry is that they're dreaming right now about goals and not defense. So, game or something like that. So.
You know about the TD Garden curse of this franchise?
No, I don't.
Well, I'll have a story on it tomorrow.
There's
been a long time.
Stories, Bill.
It's been a long time since they won in that building.
Well, that does not. There's one thing that breaks that curse, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but for the Armstrongs, it's the best place in the world. We've won a Stanley Cup there, and my son made an unbelievable pass in the bean pot there. So,
fantastic!
It does not affect the Coyotes in any way, shape, or form. That is gone.
All right.
Good luck to the rest of this trip, Bill, and please travel safe, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, you. Bill. Oh, man. Good stuff from Coyotes general manager Bill Armstrong. Thanks again to him for joining us. And it's funny, we've kind of alluded to the Coyotes' lack of success, but he just proposed a counter argument.
Could be it.
So I don't know if you're going to bet on that game. you're going to want to look at it. But if you do bet, you should use the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And the conference tournaments for basketball are happening right now. So bet $5 on any college hoops team to win their game on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Win $200 in free bets. If they do, it's that simple. If they win, you win. Arizona plays tonight. Just a plug. You want to bet on them, give it a try. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PHNX. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win their game. Get $200 in free bets. If they do, that's 21 and over. Arizona only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details.
If they win at TD Garden, I would say all bets are off.
Oh, wow.
After this, that was good, Craig. But after this last week, I do feel
Seriously,
like all
what's
bets
going
are
on?
off.
Honestly, how do you handicap this Coyote
This was
team
a
right now?
good time to talk to Bill Armstrong.
It was, and luckily, it's a lot easier to talk to them when they're winning for than when they lose 20, like he said.
Yeah.
But it is good to get that insight, and it's hard because we've been critical of this team at times throughout the season for their performance on the ice. What Bill is attempting to do to turn this franchise into a perennial playoff team is painful and difficult to do. To date, and it hasn't been a long time that he's been in charge of the team, to date he's done what he's been asked to do. Mm-hmm. The difficult part is ahead. So let's hope this draft is going to be the big piece of how this moves forward. So let's hope everything moves forward the way that he talked about his scouting staff and
the
future
and that's a key
could be
piece,
bright.
right?
Absolutely.
They've actually invested and give ownership credit for investing in those resources, understanding how scouting's the lifeblood of an organization. Petey, you and I have both been around, and I don't want to disparage past scouts. There've been some good scouts in this organization, but in terms of an entire staff with this experience and with this ability, they haven't had it. And this is the best scouting set they've ever had.
This is the focus of this organization. And they clearly understand the number of picks they have in the high rounds next or this summer and 4 months from now can set the path for this team for a decade.
Yep.
It's incredibly important. So you better get it right. You don't need to get all 8 picks in the first 2 rounds. You don't. That's not realistic. But you better hit 2, 3, 4 of them that can be everyday NHL players. It's exciting. And it's good to see the mood he was in today on the road. That's permeating through the team, the happiness, and it does happen when you win. But that's what I'm saying when we talked last night about franchises that don't have that. It's really, really, really hard. So it gives fans hope, and it's a dangerous word here in Arizona because we've heard it before, but it gives fans hope for the future.
Well, that's what I like to hear him talk about, just the energy, and even when they are going through their struggles. I mean, you look at this last week, but they've still only won, 17 or 18 games now? Yeah. I mean, that's not a lot of games won. So for them, how he said that just the energy at practice is great, how they greet each other on the play, like the sense of community in the locker room sounds really powerful. And I also really like that he said that he is there with them on the bus going through those hard times. I really, really respect that about him because he's not just up in his, office up top and pulling strings as if it's puppets. It's not his.
Yeah.
These are human beings, and you can tell that he really understands that.
Yeah. I haven't seen that before. You?
I'm not even sure how to put it. But
stayed away from that. But yeah, that was...
It can be a contentious relationship between those 2 rooms when things aren't going well.
The GM and the coaches?
Absolutely. Because one's making the team and one's trying to coach the team, and they sometimes have different goals. And when those goals are different, it's very difficult for those 2 rooms to get along.
Right.
And for him to say that the coaching staff and they work together and they communicate well is a huge step for that, because it's really easy to make those calls up in the high tower and walk right by the coach's room and not communicate and leave your coaches out to dry. It's easy to do.
Yep.
So to get in there and go, okay, here's where we're at, it speaks volumes. And there are hard days, and it's a 4-game winning streak. Everybody's happy. But we've seen this team go through some tough stretches. It ain't happy every day. And so you better be on the same page. You better all be able to communicate with each other. Otherwise, it's going to be miserable place to work. Mm-hmm. So good on Bill for having that communication, having that open, and being a part of what this process takes.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that sometimes the goals aren't the same. And when your team is really good, everybody's trying to win at that point. But coaches are always about win now. They may, be trying to bring players along. But again, the NHL is not a developmental league. So it's always about winning today. GMs can't always look at it that way, especially when you're in this situation. Yeah, you want them to get a taste of success. That's important. It really is to sort of underscore the culture that you're trying to build, but you have to look down the road as well. So there sometimes are competing interests. So it's really good to see that he's riding the bus. He's right there with them, understanding what they're going through and not shying away from being present. I wanted to get to something else that he talked about when I asked him about this narrative out there, the Coyotes need to treat their players better. I agree with him that this is mostly facilities driven at this point. There have been some issues in the past. We know the Coyotes have made some missteps. We heard about some of the stuff that was happening in the playoff bubble. Hopefully they've learned from that and they move. And I think they're sensitive to it and they understand that they made missteps in the past. But this narrative right now about, that NHLPA meeting and the players, it was very pointed and the players weren't happy about the situation. Well, Petey and you and I both know, like, we had Lawson Krause in the studio when we asked him about it. He's like, I think it'll be cool. Clayton Keller has said the same thing. So I think Bill's right in that regard. There may be some players that don't like it, but when you're talking about the guys that are going to be here for the future, we just named two really key players, and they both seem fine with it. So be careful when you paint a team with broad brushstrokes, when you're not diving into the details and learning the nuance.
Yeah, but you're talking about going to this building. Specifically, that's kind of what we're talking about, what it's like to be in Arizona. We used to say, if you remember the movie Moneyball, and we have to pay for soda, and they're dropping coins at, welcome to Oakland. Well, you don't want to be welcome to Phoenix. You don't want to be that. So you talk about this new building. The key word there is new. Everything in that facility is going to be brand freaking new. Like, you're going to get new offices, you're going to get new locker rooms, new facilities, new medical, new training. It's going to be high-end new equipment. So that's to start with. The player plays on a beautiful new ice sheet in a new beautiful building. The number of fans, does that affect their daily life as the game on the ice? It's going to be full. It's going to be loud. So I agree with you, Greg. But pump the brakes a little bit. Now, is it going to be day after day? Do you want to win the Stanley Cup in a 5,000-seat building? Probably not. No. Yeah. But they're probably not ready for that. So that's one. Two, let's go to their day-to-day and what this team does every day. They don't go to the game rink every day. Yeah. They go to practice. They practice at a practice rink. So you look at that now, it's going to be located in North Scottsdale. It's going to be closer, shorter commutes, way more convenient for everybody, and they're going to add on to those facilities at the Ice Den in Scottsdale.
Yeah, and there's been some complaints about that, right? That they have to walk across a parking lot. No, okay.
Didn't they say they were going to wrap golf carts for them?
I don't know what they're going to do. I mean,
there's still some things to work out, for sure.
But I look at that and I say, really, is that your biggest complaint, that you have to walk outside the building in the Arizona sunshine to get to the rink? Is that really worth complaining about? I mean, is it ideal? No. Could you build an entire extension on the back end of the Ice Den? I suppose you could, but it's funny. I'm writing this story on the end of Oceanside Ice Arena because ASU is playing its final series there. And I was reminded by Shane Doan of this, what that was used for the first 2 years the Coyotes got here. That was their practice facility. And when they had to work out in a gym, they were working out with dumbbells in the parking lot.
That they brought in their back of one of the players' pickups, Bobby Corkham's pickup.
Yes.
Would carry the dumbbells from America West Arena to. They worked out literally in the parking lot with dumbbells carried in their pickup truck. And guess what? Seemed to work out just fine because they made the playoffs every year they practiced.
And I love this. Greg Powers, the ASU coach, is always taking this. The adversity is the way you get there, right? You go through adversity and it makes you stronger. I get that there are standards for the NHL. I do. I understand all that. And I think they want to achieve those eventually. This is just a temporary solution. But there's a side of me that, for the people that are like, oh, how could they do that? You know what? Suck it up, Buttercup. I mean, give me a break. You're really complaining about that?
Yeah, I think, and the staff people that I have spoken with, we're fine. We're going to go practice here. We had 5-minute commute to get to work. We'll drive down to Tempe, game nights only, into a beautiful brand new arena. We're fine. They don't see the negative that maybe is seen nationally and national media. Oh, this is terrible. They're like, is it though? Is it really terrible? It's actually not too bad.
Right. And it can't stretch, right? It can't go 5-6 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Tempe's the key, right?
There needs to be the end in sight.
But if this is the bridge that gets you there, so be it.
I agree.
And I said this before on this show, and I'll say it again. I haven't spoken to anybody in the hockey world, whether they work for a team, follow a team, in media, or a player, that can't wait to play there.
Yeah.
Every one of them bitches and complains. It's too small. It's too small. Man, is it going to be fun to go there. I just hope people get can get tickets to go watch it. I'm looking forward to seeing a game there.
I'm so excited. And Tim just commented tickets are going to be expensive. And Craig addressed this with Javier in his Q&A, which you can find on gophnx.com, and also the agents that Craig referred to. I read that story this morning. It was a very, very extensive kind of polling of, what was it, eight agents
yeah.
About their thoughts. And, you know, it was very honest on their end.
There were some pointed comments.
Yeah, there were definitely some pointed comments. But I think the consensus for the most part was, like, this is still an NHL market, and players are not going to pass up having an opportunity to
They'll
play
be able
in
to
the
fill out a
NHL.
roster.
Exactly.
It's not going to be an
exactly.
issue.
So I think, you know, like, that narrative needs to go away, and, you know, we've all just sat here and said it. You can't just make this overarching comment without understanding, like, the nuances of the situation. So, you know, I'm glad that you asked him about it, and I thought his answer was really great in terms of there's a lot of good going for this organization, and it's going to be one of those things that hopefully in a few years from now, in the brand new Tempe arena that belongs to the Coyotes, that will say, oh, that was just a blip in the road on the way to this new place.
When you look at the timeline now, things are going to start coming. Really important events are going to start occurring really fast, whether it's an announcement on the arena or the NHL draft lottery or the NHL draft or what they're going to do in free agency. A lot of things are going to start happening now that are going to be shaping the future of this franchise. Like you said, Petey, like 10 years down the road, things are going to start happening that are going to shape all of that. So it's a really interesting time to be following the Coyotes right now.
And that's what we talk about, these teams that are winning cups over the last few years. Those players were drafted a decade ago for those teams, and they do build through the draft. And there's some that do it a little quicker. Pittsburgh did it quicker. Chicago did a little quicker, but it does take 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years.
Yeah.
Depends on who you get in the draft, right?
Now. But that
you
starts
get that
now.
key player, it can change things. It can speed up the timeline, but most of the time it doesn't.
It takes time, but there are some key young pieces here now. The draft is this summer. That is going to be imperative that they get a few more of those key players, and you can start to see, and you've seen it over the last week, the end of the tunnel might be there, and gosh, this might be fun.
Centers and D.
Yep.
Well,
Just keep looking at it. Like I you know, when we look at some of the wings that they've got here, there's some promise on the wings. They just, and we've been talking about this for the past 20 years. They got to get stronger up the middle. They need those key pieces. You're not going to win Cubs without
Write that down, Craig. And
elite
talk
pieces.
when we have Bill on again before, because we will have him on before the draft again, and we can ask him a little more.
And
detail
they
on
went the unusual route. Like most teams don't get to do what St. Louis did and go out and get Ryan O'Reilly right at the top of your lineup, and then Chen as well. So you don't get to do that very often. Usually you have to draft those guys. So,
well, whatever happens with this team, we will be covering it 5 days a week here at PHNX. So, Steinkraus, we asked him about that.
Do we want to answer some of these questions before we go?
Oh, yeah, we
can roll through it.
Yeah,
Seems
we
like
for
we got
sure
a lot
can.
of people on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to some of these. Some of them were directed toward Bill, but
Yeah, sorry. It wasn't a Q&A session with Bill. Only with the three of us. Apologies.
But will Gunther play on the team next year? Probably not. Then again, who knows?
We heard what he just said about he's not AHL eligible, so
I would
that's a
guess
big
he goes
leap.
back to juniors.
That's kind of what I would do with him too.
Yeah.
Don't put him in this situation. It's a big leap from the WHL to the NHL.
And he can also come in and go through training camp and play in a few NHL games and still send him back. And you can still grow and develop and see what you need to be and what you need to improve on. I don't know how that benefits Dylan Gunther next year, but let's wait and see what Dylan Gunther looks like at rookie development camp and training camp.
Yeah, if he
You
blows
never
him
say
away.
never.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, most of the questions were toward Bill, but we appreciate everybody joining and watching, and maybe next time we have him on, we'll ask in advance for
A Q&A
some
session
questions.
with Bill. Hey,
Yeah.
we're not going to ask you anything. It's all
Going to come from the chat. That would be
luck.
really interesting. But like we said, it was a great time. We're going to have him on, and I've referred to a lot of Craig's stories, a lot of good stuff coming out at gophnx.com this week. So be sure to sign up and become a member if you haven't already. You can get a shirt. Petey and I are wearing our PHNX shirts right now. So check out the PHNX locker, and members get weekly deals and merchandise, access to the members only Discord, and so much more. So become a member at gophnx.com today. Is there anything else that, while we're sitting here together on a non-post-game show?
Crazy. We'll be back here tomorrow.
I know, again tomorrow.
Again tomorrow, a 5 o'clock
The
game.
streak stay alive, Craig?
TD Garden. That's another story I got coming.
Yeah.
That's coming Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Whew. And you were there for the last time they beat the Bruins as a home team, quote unquote.
Yeah, it was
In Prague.
It was
the last time they beat them, and I was there. I barely remember that trip.
yeah.
Why?
No, and it wasn't for what you think. It was the time zone change because we literally hit the ground and we went right to the practice rink and we never stopped.
Remember that
And
story? I think I wrote about that story.
Man, I was dizzy, tired for 2 whole weeks.
Yeah.
Whew. But we did beat the Boston Bruins, and they ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year.
Yep.
Anyway,
Interesting.
digress.
All right. Well, we will be back here tomorrow after the Bruins Coyotes game on Saturday. So be sure to subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a live show. Also, like, subscribe, comment, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It's super helpful. And last but not least, please follow us on Twitter at PHNX_Coyotes. So
Petey can dance.
Petey can dance.
Yeah, and I saw Bees asked about the keys. There'll be keys tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm a little offended that PHNX Coyotes hasn't reached 3,000 followers.
But you
yet.
don't know, like they don't.
Maybe
know.
they don't want you to dance. I don't know.
As soon as the camera goes off, I usually dance in the studio after the show's over. I'm so happy. Yeah, no. Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't. There it is. Maybe you got fold your legs so we can see your calves.
See
The shins gonna make their appearance. Oh God.
That is the key to the game.
That is the key to the game. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks again to Coyotes GM Bill Armstrong for joining us, and we will see everyone tomorrow. Bye.